A Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder, Chapter 16, Part 1. Hannah groaned as she approached Andrea and Bill's table. Somehow Dolores and Carrie had found them, and both mothers were looking impatient. She felt like turning around and going back to the ladies' powder room, but her mother raised her hand and wiggled her fingers. It was too late. She'd been spotted. "There you are, dear." Dolores gave her a wide smile. "We're ready to take the pictures now." "That's wonderful." Hannah's reply sounded sarcastic, even to her own ears, and she smiled to take the edge off her words. She glanced at Norman. He didn't look at all upset about the upcoming photo session, but perhaps he was one of those lucky people who were photogenic. Hannah knew she wasn't. No trick of light or instruction from the photographer could make her look on Kodak paper. The mothers led the way across the room. Norman left Hannah to take his mother's arm, and Bill followed suit with Dolores. Hannah pulled Andrea back just a bit so she could apologize. "I'm sorry, Andrea, I didn't mean to take so long." "That's okay, you were right, Hannah. Some of the things that Norman said were really funny. We were having a good time until the mothers found us. They want us to pose too." "Great." Hannah was more than happy to have company in her misery. "Maybe you'll make me look good by osmosis or something." Andrea laughed. "Come on, Hannah. You know you look wonderful tonight. That dress is so perfect on you. It even makes your hair look nice." "Thanks, I think." Hannah grinned. Then she realized that the Mother Brigade was turning down the hallway that led to the ladies' powder room. "Where are they going?" "I'm not sure. Mrs. Rhodes said she found the perfect setting for the pictures. I just hope we are not going to barge into some place we shouldn't be." The group stopped at the end of the hall and waited for Hannah and Andrea to catch up. Then Carrie opened the door and ushered them into a large room lined with bookshelves. It was done in a masculine style, with leather couches and armchairs, a massive wooden desk, and hunting prints on the wall. There was an incredible river rock fireplace in the corner, and Hannah stared at it in awe. "This is Del Woodley's den," Carrie announced. "Should we be in here?" Bill looked very uneasy. "I mean, it's not off limits to guests, is it?" Carrie shook her head. "I asked him, and he said it was perfectly all right." Hannah exchanged an amused glance with Andrea. Norman's mother was a lot like Dolores. Not only had Carrie waltzed into Lake Eden's only formal affair with her camera, she'd even asked their host if she could use one of his private rooms to take pictures. "Stand over by the fireplace with Bill." Dolores motioned to Andrea. "We'll do yours first, just in case Bill gets called away." Hannah watched as the sister posed with Bill. Then Carrie decided that the two couples should stand together, and Hannah and Norman joined them. They arranged themselves obediently. Hannah and Andrea in front, Norman and Bill in back, while Carrie clicked away. Then she took another series with the four of them lined up in a row like soldiers, and the girls in the center flanked by the two boys. "Let's take a few on the couch," Dolores suggested. "That always looks nice." Hannah suffered through more photos, wondering how soon Norman's mother would run out of film. As soon as this ordeal was over, she had to pull Bill aside and bring him up to speed. Bill was tracing Ron's movements on the morning of the murder, and he didn't know that Ron had gone into the dairy at 6:15 and seen Max Turner in his office. It might not relate to Ron's murder at all, but it was a new piece of information, and Bill could ask Max about his early morning meeting. "You look distracted, dear." Dolores waggled a finger at her. "Concentrate on looking pretty and say cheese." "Gorgonzola," Hannah muttered under her breath, and Andrea started to giggle. "You're moving, Andrea," Dolores warned. "Carrie can't focus if you're moving." Hannah rolled her eyes just as Norman's mother snapped the picture. Didn't Dolores know that most of the cameras were autofocus these days? If she had to endure another minute of flashes and admonitions about smiling from her mother, she was going to explode in sheer frustration. "We'd better take that one again." Dolores turned to Carrie. "I think Hannah squinted." Just as Hannah was about to rebel, Norman stood and held up his hands. That's enough, Mother. Sit on the couch with Mrs. Swenson and I'll take a couple of you. Turnabout's fair play, Hannah murmured to Andrea as they stood off to the side and watched Norman take pictures of their mothers. Let's tell Mother her lipstick's on crooked. Andrea looked horrified at the thought. Don't! Then she'll have to get out a mirror and fix it, and that'll take even longer. Hannah was about to point out that they'd taken enough pictures to paper the entire back wall in her shop when she heard a low beeping noise. She turned to Bill and asked, Is that your pager? Bill retrieved his pager from his pocket. He glanced at the display and frowned. I've got to call in. You don't have to go, do you? Andrea grabbed at his sleeve. We haven't even danced yet. Bill gave her a little hug. I know, but the dispatcher punched in the emergency code. Where's the nearest phone? Right here. Hannah pointed to the one next to the couch. Go ahead, Bill. We want to know what's happening. Bill punched out the number and talked to someone at the sheriff's station. Hannah listened to his end of the conversation, but, okay, right away, and I'll do that, didn't tell her much. There's a big accident out on the interstate, Bill informed them as he hung up the phone. They're calling everyone in. Shall I take you? Andrea offered. No, you can stay. I'll catch a ride out with one of the other guys. Bill patted her shoulder. Have a good time for me, okay? Reading the glum expression on Andrea's face, Hannah doubted that she was going to have a good time without Bill. But her sister nodded. Okay, honey, be careful, and I'll see you at home. After Bill left, they all trooped back to the party. Hannah had seen Norman rewind the film and drop it into his pocket, and she was curious. Are you going to put the film in the night drop at the drugstore, Norman? No. Norman shook his head. I'll develop it myself when I get home. I just finished setting up my dark room. You're a photographer? Just an amateur. I caught the bug when I was in Seattle. It's a great hobby. I'll bring the prints by the cookie jar on my lunch break tomorrow so you can see them. The orchestra was playing by the time they re-entered the ballroom, and Norman asked Hannah to dance. She couldn't refuse without seeming rude, and Hannah found herself suffering through an agonizingly slow waltz. Norman was, at best, a tentative dancer, and Hannah really wanted to lead. But she didn't want to hurt Norman's feelings, and she endured their dance with a smile on her face. When the dance had ended, Norman escorted her back to Andrea and their mothers. As they were standing there talking, Hannah spotted Betty Jackson. She wanted to ask Betty if she knew about Max's early morning meeting, but Bill wouldn't like it if she dragged Norman along. Would you like to dance again, Hannah? Norman offered, holding out his arm. Hannah tried not to flinch at the thought. There was no way she wanted to dance with Norman again. She was just trying to think of a tactful excuse when she had a brilliant idea. Why don't you ask Andrea? I heard her tell Bill that she wanted to dance. Good idea. Norman turned to Andrea with a smile. How about it, Andrea? Would you like to dance? Andrea shot Hannah a wounded look as she danced off with Norman, and Hannah knew she'd have some explaining to do. She'd point out that dancing with Norman, no matter how painful, was better than getting stuck with the mothers.